First of all, thank you all for coming out for this very special day that is probably well past and overdue. We felt like it was time to recognize Jack for his efforts out here at the airport. But first of all, let me take care of some house cleaning things. Commissioner Dereker, would you stand or hold your hand up? Commissioner Mike Brownberger, he's out of town. He has a business that he has to run, so he thought he had to be out of town. Senate City Administrator James Conley. Next, I need to give some special thank yous to individuals. Dr. Mark Costley. Brian Hunter. Ralph Scott, Airport Superintendent Howard Frazier. Another individual that I'd like to recognize is Chris Fulner. Chris, would you stand up? Chris, we know that you had a big input into the airport out here, and we appreciate what you've done. On behalf of the Monett City Council, I want to welcome and thank you for your attendance on this very special day. It is truly fitting that this day falls on Veterans Day. As we remember those that served our country unselfishly, tonight I would ask that you say a special prayer for those that are still in harm's way. Those of you that have served in the armed services, would you please stand and remain standing? Please continue to stand. We need to remember those that have not come home and not to forget their families and never forget the individuals that have served. Would you all please join me in facing the flag and saying I pledge allegiance? Would you all please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You can be seated. The Monett Airport is much more than a provider of safe transportation and efficient transportation. It's a provider of jobs and millions of dollars of economic activity. Most of the airport is truly a regional airport, serving general aviation activities, focusing on serving business activities, including small jets and multiple engine aircraft. This type of airport serves a significant role in supporting the local and regional economies and connecting them with the state and national economies. The airport is truly an outstanding partnership between local government and business. This airport would not be what it is without the relationship, without the leadership that is present between Jack Henry & Associates and EFCO. Jack Henry & Associates and EFCO worked with the city in planning and in the financial aspect of making this airport what it is today. I'd like to give a round of applause to Jack Henry and EFCO. Other individuals that I'd like to recognize are those that served on advisory committees for the airport in the early days. Starting with Gary Bass, would you please stand if you're here? Chris Coleman, Patty Holt, Tate Mackey, Jack Schultz, Harold Schleen. There's Harold coming in. Gail Huffmaster, Bill Medlin, Rex Kay, Jerry Sebastian, Shane Novak, Dave Doney. Okay. These individuals gave of their time and effort in planning the airport in the early stages up into what we have now today. Next of all, I'd like to recognize Brenda Henry. Would you please stand? And I didn't see Jerry Hall come in. Jerry, okay. Next, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Dr. Mark Costley for some comments.
Thanks, Jack. Jack, I'm not sure how a guy that doesn't like to speak in front of crowds and doesn't like to fly is up here talking today, but here I am. So, first, I want to thank the council. This is a great thing that you've done. It's something that doesn't get done like this very often, and it speaks to the magnitude of the contribution that Jack's made to the airport out here. On a personal side, I want to thank the council for the great job that they've done with the city and Dennis. Great job. We have a great fire department, great police department, great parks, electric, water, street. So I think the city is something for us to be extremely proud of, and I want to give them a hand right now. Lou Holtz once said, when everything's said and done, there's a lot more said than being done. This is the opposite of that. There was a lot more done than was being said. We talk about Jack's contribution out here. This airport, evidently in the 60s, was the Friend Airport. It was started by Hubert and Harold Friend. They had a plane that they flew as part of their business, and they built it out here. In the mid-60s, they took their business to Arizona, and they sold this to Danny Pudick, and it became a drag strip. And I'm sure some of you guys remember coming out here on Sunday afternoon and going to the drags. As part of that, an extra 1,100 feet got added to one of the runways here for the drag strips for the cars to be able to slow down at the end when the parachutes came out. Late in the 60s, kind of the muscle cars disappeared, drag strip disappeared, and someone bought the airport. No one really kind of knew who that was, really didn't see any planes landing and taking off during the day. Kind of got figured out that planes were landing and taking off at 2 o'clock in the morning. One thing led to another, led to a kind of a DEA stakeout, and they found that there was a lot of drugs being flown in. And the airport was actually confiscated as part of that. And then in 1981, the city bought this for $1. So, kind of fast forward to how I got involved with Jack. I moved back to Monette in '85, and I got a call from Jack one day and said, "Mark, would you come out to the airport Friday at 2:30? Would you bring T along?" That's my wife. "There's something I need help with." And I said, "Sure." Now, tell you something about Jack. In those days and in these days, you go around town and you talk to people, and pretty much everybody you talk to, you know, he either got you your first job, he gave you the loan so that you start your first business, or in my case, he wrote a recommendation to me for medical school, and then kind of helped me move to Monette when I was facing adversity. Got me an office and actually got his truck and a trailer and moved over and personally got my furniture and moved me to Monette. So when Jack called me and said, "Would you come out to the airport?" I said, "Sure, I'll be glad to be there." So that wasn't a hard choice to make. So we got out there at 2:30. Jack wasn't anywhere around. So we sat around for a couple minutes. Pretty soon we heard a plane, looked up, and here came the King Air. It came in and landed, came down, and Jack and Jack Henry hauled out of there, both of them with big grins on their face. And that was kind of my first reintroduction to Jack Henry after I got back to Monette. And I'd known Jack before I left, briefly, and then kind of came back here and met him. So we talked for a minute or two. Jack Henry left to go back to work. And Jack said, "I need your help with something." I said, "Just name it." He said, Jack Henry and I have a vision for this airport. Now, I don't know if you remember that, but as I was thinking and processing through this talk, I remember him saying that to me. We had a vision for this airport. I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, we have the state DOT coming down in about a month, and we're trying to make improvements on the runway." He said, "Every time we land, I reverse the thrusters, and it sucks asphalt up into the engine, and it's hard on the engine. So if we could do some stuff for this runway, it'd make it more functional, and in the future, it could grow." Great. So we're walking around, and he said, "We're going to walk around, and we'll, I'm going to tell you what we need to do." I was like, "Well, how come you brought P out here?" He said, "Well, because she's going to write it down because I can't read your writing." Okay. All right. So, Terry, follow him around and take notes. So we walked around, and Jack said, you know, we need to overlay this, we need to do this, we need lights, we need a sock, we need this, we need that. So we got all done, we had the notes, we went back, Terry Ann typed it up, and Jack and I got together, and so we went as far as to find out how much asphalt was for bulk. You remember this? And we put that whole thing together, bid it all out, and we figured for $108,000 we could make this runway very useful. So we got out there that day, had it all presented, we had it all typed up. The state DOT guy comes out with the city leaders, walks out, looks out, and he said, well, we can't ever do anything with that runway. He said, there's a hump in it. He said, we're going to have to go west and build a brand new one. And so we're kind of standing there going, you know, at first our hearts kind of fell, and then we're really excited. And I saw Jack kind of take that and kind of slip it in our proposal into his back pocket, because what all we've done really didn't mean anything, because what we're going to do is go build a new 3,000-foot runway. And so, you know, that was pretty exciting for us. And so, you know, time went by, and the runway got built, and about a week or two after the runway was built, you know, Terry will tell you I'm kind of a tasker. I like to make lists and cross them off. So I had airport on my list. So I called Jack up and I said, Jack, I said, well, you finally got your airport. And there was kind of a pause, and he said, no, son. And when he calls me son, I pay attention. No, son, he said, you have a runway. You don't have an airport. And I was like, oh, well, put that back up on the list, because we ain't going to get rid of that, because we don't have an airport. And I'll tell you to this day, and he'll tell you this, I've never asked him, do we have an airport yet? Because in his mind, there's always more to be done. So we did have a runway, we didn't have an airport, and we kept working. So things kind of through the years, you know, with the help of EFCO and with the help of everybody else, there were runway extensions, taxiway extensions, new T-hangars got built. And so, and just know that whatever part I'm talking about here, when Jack calls me, he used me for a sounding board, but the work was done by him. So he calls me one day, he says, Mark, I was out at the airport, and he said, this Cessna comes flying in, kind of bobbles in, hits, lands, comes up there. This right here, gentleman gets out. And he said, I said, hi, how you doing? He said, I'm doing fine. And he said, I could tell he was older. He said, would you like to use our restroom? And I said, and he said, sure. He said, I've got cancer now, and I need to kind of collect some urine. He said, well, hi, I'm Jack Fox. He said, hi, I'm Sam Walton. And he said, had I not been there, Sam would have had no place to go to the bathroom, because our terminal at that time, if you look on one of these pictures up here, was about a 15 by 20 concrete block building that had one small, stool in it that you really couldn't get clean, and it was a pretty dirty place, and it wasn't open. So Jack said, Mark, we have to have a terminal. So lots of time, lots of effort, working with city council. We got the new terminal built, and he got the new terminal built about a year and a half later. And come out here someday and see what a beehive of activity that terminal is. It's huge. There's planes in and planes out. When we had the last meeting to talk about setting this up, there was a jet sitting in front of it. The gubernatorial candidate, Dave Spence, had flown in here to go to a meeting that night, was flying out. So there's jets, there's pilots, there's captains in industry, there's companies that own companies in Monette, there's people that are looking things that fly in this airport every day. But that terminal is their front door. It's what they open up, it's what they see. Jack took me one time to a small town in Kansas to look at a company. We flew over there, we landed, it was a short runway, there was 2 or 3 boarded up hangars and grass about this tall. And he said, Mark, what's that say about this town to you if you're flying into it? I said, it's not much. You don't think that there's much going on in the town. When you land at this airport, you know what's going on. So we got the terminal, he got the terminal built, pretty exciting time. So, more runway extensions, more hangars getting built. Jack Henry's adding jets. EFCO's adding jets. Everything's going along. And so he calls me one day and says, Mark, there was an article in the paper and they were talking about the city budget. And realized that the airport loses money. We know that. But he said, the most important thing is there's not a lot in the city that makes money other than the electric company. And he said, but people, you look at the park, you look at the golf course, you look at everything that's out there, that they have to understand how important this is to the town. And he said, council's going to come and go, But unless we convince the people of this town that this airport's important, things could happen and this airport could go down. As much work and as much effort has been put in out there, that could go away. So he said, we need to change the attitude of town. So things kind of progressed. There was a city airport board, and we ended up doing hamburger fries for 50 to 100 people every other month for 2 years. We figured out there was a couple thousand people we brought through out here. And they'd be in the hangar. We closed the airport. They'd take them out on the runway, driving up and down. We'd have, talk a little bit on the airport. We have bulletin boards and everything. And at that meeting is where we introduced them to Jack's theory of what the airport is. And he says that piece of concrete out there is the same as Cleveland and Central, that people go to work on it every day. And at that time, we calculated up that there were 9,000 people a year going to work off in that runway. So maybe not quite as many people as Cleveland, but pretty close. And that was the theory. And people understood that was right, and it was the right thing to do. So Jack, your influence out here has been tremendous. I think that the point of this is that not only are you responsible for what's been built and done out here, you're also responsible for us helping to let the people of the town understand how important it is to them. Last night I got the honor of hearing Rudy Giuliani talk in Branson, and he talked about true leadership. And he said there's 4 things that true leadership has. You have to have vision, you have to have goals, you have to be optimistic, and you have to do something. And as I stood there, Terry said this morning, are you going to say anything about that? Because that's Jack. And so Jack, thank you for your leadership, thank you for your dedication, and thank you for your friendship.
Thank you, Lawrence. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Hunter with the AFCO. How about Jack Henry?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank all previous board members who made the airport, helped the airport get to where we are today. Jack, I'd like to thank you and Jack Henry for hiring me in 1989. It's been a great ride. When we first started out, I had, and I say this with a little sarcasm, I had the opportunity to fly out of the old runway with Jack. Now that runway was 2,400 feet long, and if anybody's here that's not a pilot, I can tell you that is a very short runway. What made it even shorter was the fact that there were power lines on the north end of the airport, and so we couldn't even use all of the 2,400 feet. We used about 500 feet just getting over the power lines, and then we land the airplane, shut it down. For a little while, I thought Jack was trying to train me to be a Navy pilot. All I needed was a hook and an arrestor line. But if you know Jack, you know that can't be, because he is an Air Force guy. Just a little after starting to use the old airport, we got the 3,000-foot runway, and we were very excited to start using that new 3,000-foot runway. And as far as I was concerned, 3,000 feet looked pretty darn good. But when it came to Jack, Jack had a vision. 3,000 feet wasn't going to be near enough. As Mark pointed out, 3,000 feet was a runway. Jack's vision was to have an airport. An airport serviced the needs of recreational pilots and business travelers. And much like the roads in town, they carry everybody for recreation. They carry everybody, they get everybody to their job. An airport does basically the same thing. People come out here for recreation, but a lot of people come out here to go to a job. The important part, or I think the advantage that Jack understood, was that a true airport didn't really wasn't just a runway. It was something that led people, to work, for recreation, but also it brought people in from other communities into our community to go to work. And that's what we have today, is we have an attraction out here that brings a lot of people in from other places. You all might not see what I see, but I see a lot of people when I go out to dinner or I go out to Walmart that are not from Monette. They're from Charlotte, they're from San Diego, Kansas City, Birmingham. And those folks are coming in through this airport a lot of times. As the years passed on, as you can see on the poster, a lot of improvements were made. Every improvement that the airport made the airport more capable and more attractive to those business travelers and recreational pilots. Today, I look out my window when I come to work and I see charter organizations flying in. I see helicopters. I see fractional ownerships. I see handfuls of corporations using our airport. Today, Monette ranks amongst all airports in the state of Missouri as 9th in economic output. Now, just think about the company that we share today. The other airports that are ahead of Monette are St. Louis Lambert, St. Louis Spirit Airport, Kansas City International, Kansas City Downtown, St. Joseph, Columbia, Springfield, and Joplin. So can you even imagine thinking that we would be in that same grouping of airports 20 years ago from today? That is quite an accomplishment. Today, this airport brings in over $26 million in economic output. Monette's per capita economic output is more than St. Louis Lambert. And as I said, that's quite an accomplishment. Jack, I want to thank you personally. I want to thank you on behalf of my family, on all of the people that come to work here every day, all of the people that go to work through this airport every day, and what you've done for our community. Congratulations. This is quite an honor.
Thank you, Brian. On October the 19th, the City Council of the City of Monette introduced a resolution in honor of I'm tongue-tied, Jack Fox. I put you in good company at least, Jack. So on behalf, I'd like to read that. Whereas Jack Fox graduated from Monette High School in 1951 and from the University of Missouri in 1955 with distinction as a member of the Air Force ROTC, a letter-winning member of the University of Missouri football team. And whereas Jack Fox served as an officer in the United States Air Force from 1956 to 1958, where he completed his duty as a flight instructor of F-86Ls. And whereas upon completion of his active military duty, he returned to Monette in 1959, served as president and board member of the Gilloys Bank and Trust Company. Whereas Jack has served in many leadership roles and is an active member of the Monette business community over 50 years, including positions with the following organizations: member of the Monette Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, member of the Monette Board of Education, member of the Board of the United States Methodist Church, member of the Monette Municipal Airport Board, member of the Board of Directors of F Corporation, member of the Board of Directors of the First State Bank, president of the Monette Junior Chamber of Commerce, director of aviation for Jack Henry and Associates, member of the Board of Directors of the Monette Industrial Development Corporation, organizer of the Monette Mighty Might Football and Associates. In 2004, was the recipient of the Chamber of Commerce Service Award. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Monette meeting in regular session this 19th day of October 2012, that Jack Fox be recognized and honored for his years of service to the city of Monette, specifically for his contributions made in the development of the expansion of the Monette Airport. Be it further resolved that in appreciation of the contributions the city of Monette shall dedicate portions of the Monette Airport as Fox Field and place a monument at the airport acknowledging that distinction. Prepare a wall of honor in the airport terminal, displaying his many accomplishments, designating the entry road to the airport as Stearman Lane. And by this declaring Sunday, November 12, 2012, as Jack Fox Day, with a ceremony in honor at the airport. Jack, appreciate it. Next, I'd like to show some things that will be displayed at the terminal. This is a plaque that will be placed in the entryway. And this will be hanging on the wall of the terminal building. Thank you. One of the toughest things we've had is trying to keep this as a surprise up until October the 19th. We've been meeting for several meetings before that, and it took us a while to put some things together, and some of the things aren't completed yet, but we have this much done, and we'll finish the rest of it up. The resolution is also on the bottom of the farthest easel over there, if you'd like to look at it, along with the pictures that Brian Hunter's provided of the past history of the airport. Also, the 20th of this month, the city of Monette will introduce a resolution changing the name of the Monette Airport from Monette Municipal Airport to Monette Regional Airport. We felt like it was time and we had the things that we needed to ask for that distinction. So that will be submitted to the state. Next, I'd like to introduce Jack. Jack, for your comments. Anything that you'd like to add and introduce any individuals that you'd like to introduce.
Well, I've got to thank the city council. Overwhelming gesture, and I appreciate it very much. Before I introduce my family, a couple of folks, is this working?
Yeah.
Can you all hear?
Yes.
A couple of folks I'd like to mention before I get into that. 60 years ago this past June, two of these guys came to Monette for the first time for our wedding. Pete Mell and Vic Eaton. Pete Mell goes by Pete to old timers. He goes by Roger, and among other names from his wife. But he's also Dr. Mell. We only call him that when we want some free medical attention. Appreciate you guys being here, your wives. I have to say I'm especially gratified that Joan Mell came. We've had a kind of a edgy relationship over the years. Pete asked me if I'd give her a ride in a Stearman, maybe 15, 20 years ago, and I agreed to do that. And that was going fine until she started to get in. She happened to notice that I had a parachute in my seat. She didn't have one. That didn't seem fair to her for some reason, and it seemed perfectly fair to me. Anyway, we appreciate Marianne and Joan being here with you. Thanks for coming. Means an awful lot to our students. Also, I want to introduce an appropriate day for this on Veterans Day. 3 aviators. Would you guys stand and let the folks take a look at you? Thank you. We appreciate your service. We honor your service. They're all aspiring F-16 fighter pilots. And I have, in all honesty, tell you, I'm terribly envious of what you're doing. Love to be up there with you if you can ever arrange it. I want to, Tossie kind of stole a bunch of my stuff. I do appreciate the Mona Airport Board, all of you. The contributions that got made were way beyond what I could have done. And not only airport board members, we had a lot of people in our community. Mark mentioned the terminal. The president of Jumpin' Jacks came out here one day with a lady client to go back to her company. She was an important client. They got out of the car and went in the old terminal, and it was somewhat like the city jail bathroom. And when they got ready to leave, the lady says, well, I better go to the bathroom, and before we leave, she took one step in there and backed up and said, it's only a couple-hour flight, I think I'm good. So, Jerry McCaffrey called me, and he was somewhat upset about that. Now, to get this so you understand how tough it was, it's the first time our city was ever asked to fund something that wasn't partially funded by the state or the feds. So it was a little bit tough, and our airport board at that time took turns of going down City Hall, lay down on the floor and kicking and screaming for about 5 minutes, asking for that improvement. But the letter that Jerry McCaffrey wrote did more than all we could have ever done. They immediately recognized that we did need to, if we were going to talk about pride and progress, we need to get rid of that bathroom. So there are lots of folks that helped. The board was strong, worked hard. EPCO, Terry Fullner said, get us an elevation to build a hangar or we're moving. And it was that serious for lots of us, and fortunately we were able to get it done. I was going to talk a lot of that stuff, but Cosley got so windy he got almost all of it said. I would like to thank my family for being here. I wish I could talk to all of you about being here, each one of you individually. Appreciate you being here. But I got my wife, who's put up with all this for a long time. Would you stand up? My daughter, son, their families. Appreciate all of you being here. A lot of good friends here. I would only have one other thing to add, and that's that without Jack Henry, the vision he had, the courage he had to step up, number one, just to land the airplane on this dadgum airport when we first started, but also he put his billfold out and we started trying to do business. And it was not a pleasant place, but it worked out. His vision was so far beyond what any of us